Take 6. So my phone died, but as we were before, the AW climate, Rio de Janeiro, or the tropical and dry. And Rio de Janeiro, it's under the A climate zone, which means has a moist tropical climate. These group of climates are characterized as having warm temperatures, heavy rainfall, and they typically range between 15 to 25 degrees on either side of the equator. Specifically, as I was talking about Rio de Janeiro, it has a tropical, wet, and dry climate, and the name signifies the characteristics of the climate. Because there's a sharp contrast in weather between the seasons. So you see the wet seasons, a lot of rainfall. You see the dry seasons is, again, very dry, as the name implies. So these climate zones, there's a lot of precipitation, but it's unreliable, inconsistent, and it also varies from season to season as well as year to year. And then we have the CFA climate zones in Sao Paulo. This is the humid subtropical climate. As I said, it falls under the C classification, or the moist subtropical mid-latitude climate zone. So these are typically characterized as being humid, having mild winters, and they fall between 25 to 40 degrees on either side of the equator. And as you can see, this is slightly below or above in the previous climate. Again, looking at Sao Paulo, it's classified as CFA, or humid subtropical. These regions are known for their hot and humid weather. Very hot, very humid, especially in the summer. They're also characterized as having fairly heavy precipitation, not as much as the previous climate, but again, a lot of precipitation, and thunderstorms are very common. Now we will be looking at what exactly is climate change. So when we talk about climate change, we're talking about it's a natural for the most part. It's happened throughout history. Some people deny it, or some people don't agree to the extent of how it affects us. However, the point is climate change is real, and there's a lot of factors that change it. It's often we hear global warming, climate change are often used interchangeably. Like I said, it's happened throughout history. It's typically been natural, but unlike ever before, we're seeing an increase in climate change due to human development. So humans are starting to have a huge impact on the climate, more so than ever before. So what are the factors of climate change? These would be the climate controls is what they're considered. The main ones are considered sunshine, the intensity of sunlight, land and water distribution, ocean currents, prevailing winds, high and low pressure areas, mountain barriers, altitude, and human settlements. And this right here, as I said before, human settlements is different because it came with humans. We have been changing the climate ourselves with our development and our production. As we moved away from agricultural societies, we've changed the landscape of the environment. So, as I said before, climate change by human settlements. Due to aerosols, releasing aerosols in the lower atmosphere, really containing the heat, increasing the heat. Greenhouse gases, you think like carbon dioxide, and our land use has changed. So, as we moved away from hunters and gatherers to becoming more of an agricultural society to an industrialized society, this changed this different use of land. Rather than working with nature, now we're working more against it. So as humans have become more industrialized, with our factories, our production, consumption, we've used energy like never before, and it's beginning to change the environment. Not beginning, but it's been changing the environment. So now we'll talk about the specific impact of climate change on Brazil. This is a short video that kind of summarizes the issue. I'm actually not going to play this video. It's about 3 minutes long. It's fairly brief. But in summary, video, as it covers climate change in Brazil, kind of talks about what is climate change, kind of like I have. Then it focuses the issue on Brazil and how it affects the precipitation, how it affects the water shortages, and even covers how it affects the wildlife in Brazil. Specifically, it talks about sea turtles, which I thought that was funny, but moving on. Here we have deforestation in the Amazon. This is not what deforestation looks like. This is a picture of the Amazon, very beautiful, luscious trees. See the river, just real bright, beautiful, flowing. But deforestation is causing this to be a rare sight in the Amazon. We're seeing an increase in droughts and forest fires, destroying trees. And trees are, essential to us, but it's also essential to the wildlife. So it has a profound impact on the wildlife in the Amazon. And the Amazon is huge. It's beautiful, it's large. And so, as I said, it's having a very big impact. The Amazon is actually about a little over 2 million square miles, and it's home to 309 billion trees. 390 individual trees. So, as you can imagine, vast area. You probably can't imagine actually because it's huge. It's just trees everywhere, but we're starting to see where these trees are dying off, and it's a lot of the wildlife is going on with them. Now back to Brazil, we're going to be talking about the basic human needs. So what humans need to survive, very basic level: food, water, shelter. This is something that everybody kind of knows. Humans, we don't need Walmart. We don't need clothes. We don't need like fancy clothes or anything like that to survive. We simply need food, we need water, and we need shelter. However, climate change is having an impact on all of these basic needs. So as far as food, the crops are being destroyed. As far as water, we're having water shortages. And with shelter, floods are destroying cities and people's homes ultimately. So climate change is having an impact. It's not just nature and trees, it's having an impact on humans and our needs through survival. And looking at the climate change, we're going to be talking about the weather patterns right here. And one of the main reasons of climate change is the change in weather patterns, or one of the main effects of climate change, I should say. So we see an increase in precipitation. That's a big one. This precipitation, causes floods, increases sea levels. So it's very bad. And as you can see, we already are in a wet climate zone when we're talking about Brazil. But the increased rainfall in an already in an area that's already has a lot of heavy precipitation really just like ravages the environment. And so there's a lot of confusion of this because when we talk about climate change, we talk about increased precipitation, increased sea levels, but we're also talking about water droughts. So, why is that? How is that? A lot of people, wonder why they're confused about it. So, as I say, there's an increase in rainfall, but there's also an increase in water shortages. So, really, there's like a really vicious water cycle that's occurring that explains why that happens. So like I said, the increased precipitation, there's a lot of water, there's a lot of rain and stuff. However, there's also a lot of evaporation and transpiration due to the increase in temperature. So as I said, the combination of this, it's a really intense water cycle that really does damages, and that's how you get floods, but you also get droughts. Very bad combination, very harmful combination. Now looking at just some facts about Rio de Janeiro and Sao Paulo. So for Sao Paulo, the population is about 12 million. It's very large. It's actually Earth's 13th largest city. Also happens to be the wealthiest city in Brazil. So this is a very important area. It also has the 11th largest, GDP in the world. So, big population, big city. Also, there's a strong international influence in terms of commerce, finance, arts, and entertainment. So very, very thriving city, very large city. Here we have Rio de Janeiro, another large city, population standing at about 7.5 million. Of course, not as big as Sao Paulo, but still very large. Definitely not, an Owensboro or anything like that. It's also one of Brazil's most educated areas. It is the second largest center of research and development in Brazil. So, as I said, another thriving area, education. There's a lot of research. There's a lot of discoveries being made here. A lot of development. There's a lot going on. And top that off with tourism. Rio de Janeiro, it's a beautiful city. Lots of attractions. Lots of tourist destinations. So a lot of people coming here, visiting it. It's really pretty, very nice place to stay. And talking about Rio de Janeiro again, we have Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro. They're both located along the eastern coast of Brazil. As I kind of showed that earlier. And so when you think about the East Coast, the coast, right beside a large body of water, right beside an ocean. So as you can imagine, this is drastically going to affect, the flooding, being right beside an ocean. And so because of this, you have these two thriving cities, both very populous, both making strides in education and arts and entertainment, very popular for tourism, very pretty. You put them on the East Coast, and there's a lot of problems there when you factor in climate change because of the flooding, because of the precipitation, the droughts. The flooding, in terms of economy, it's going to affect businesses. Businesses are, flooding, going out because of that. People are going out of their homes because of the flood. People are dying because of floods. And you also have the cities having to pay for this, the damages of the floods. So that's obviously a very big impact. You also think in terms of resources, not having enough water, there's not enough resources, you have so many people, what do you do there? There's a lot of issues being raised by climate change because of the location of these two cities. Now we're talking about poverty, and I thought this was interesting to look at when I was researching. So on this side, you have the median income, and as you can see, these lighter shades, that's the lower income, and these darker shades would be the higher income. We're looking at Rio de Janeiro and Sao Paulo. Those are down up in here. So as I said before, more of the wealthier places. However, South America and Brazil is like a medium income nation or medium income country. It's not it isn't like the United States where we're high income. There's still a lot of people that are reliant on agriculture, on crops. So the flooding really does have a bigger effect probably on them than it would on us, just because their economy isn't where we are. However, even when you see places like Rio de Janeiro and Sao Paulo, while the income might be higher, the median income might be higher, these middle income nations, there's much more of a gap between the rich and the poor. So it's not necessarily, everybody's living great. It's still going to have a large effect on people. But I thought it was interesting to look at comparing these two. This is the effects of climate change. So the darker the area, the larger effect climate change has on the poverty. So as you can see, these already poor places in South America are being hit very hard. And these poor places are heavily affected, are heavily reliant on their crops. And so, as I said before, the climate change, the flooding, that's going to affect their crops. Farmers are going to plant less because of the flooding. So ultimately, there's less resources. And it's affecting all these people. And you see, it's still affecting over here, but the poor areas, it's affecting greatly. And what do the people in this poor area do whenever, they're having all these climate change issues, they go down to the wealthier places, the places less affected. These places become more populous, and there's and even more need for resources in these places where resources are becoming scarce. So that just creates a big loop, a big problem in itself. I thought this was very interesting when I was researching this. And so, as you can see, there's a lot of issues with climate change. So, what can we do to take action against it? What can we do to change climate change? So, many people, they think of on an individual level, and that's very important to be cautious of how much energy we consume, especially in a place like America, where it's very important. So, like I said, on an individual level, there's a lot we can do. It's very important. However, in our society, it's very difficult. Our society, with all the technology, it really is heavy about consumption. So that makes it really difficult to pull back on an individual level. However, what really needs to be done to affect the issue at large, because it's such a global issue, we have to put more policies in place on a national and global scale to conserve our resources, reduce energy consumption, and ultimately help our environment. Because an individual alone isn't going to change it, and even the nation alone isn't going to change it. It's a global effort to protect our planet, and that's what needs to be done. So, a summary for today, what I've talked about today. I went over what is climate, what is climate change, how is climate change affecting us, how is it affecting Brazil, Rio de Janeiro, Sao Paulo, and I did connect climate change with the region, that theme of geography. However, I did kind of touch on some other themes of geography just because climate change is an issue that affects a wide variety of things, and it's hard to focus on one thing specifically because it's really a domino effect, as in this affects that, affects this, which affects that. So it kind of just rolls on top of each other. There's a lot of negatives, a lot of drawbacks to it, but going on here, my works cited from all the pictures I use, all the information, and thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I hope you've learned something, gained something from this, and hopefully we can all be more cautious of our environment after this, and see climate change as a bigger issue. And I would like to see more done on a national and global scale to combat this issue. And thank you. I'm out.